The moment the predator cub bit the human, every alien in the sanctuary prepared for war, and the human just knelt down and asked what had scared it. I was there when it happened, standing behind the reinforced glass of Nursery Habitat 3 with my hand already over the lockdown control, watching the worst diplomatic incident of my career unfold around one very small, very frightened Kravik cub and one very calm Earthborn male named Caleb Morgan. The cub's name was Ruin, though calling it a cub often misled visitors into imagining something soft, harmless, and decorative. Ruin was soft, yes, in the way a thundercloud looks soft from a distance. He weighed almost 80 pounds at 4 months old, had paws wider than my face, golden black fur that rose along his spine when alarmed, and the kind of bright amber eyes that made prey species remember old instincts they had paid good money to evolve past. Kravik were apex predators from the iron forests of Var, bred by nature to hear heartbeats through bark, smell stress on the wind, and decide very quickly whether a stranger was a threat, a meal, or a mistake. Our sanctuary handled them with layered shields, sonic barriers, scent dampeners, and the kind of cautious procedures that required 12 signatures before anyone entered a nursery enclosure. Then the humans sent Caleb Morgan as a behavioral consultant. White skin, short brown hair, plain gray field jacket, no armor, no intimidation crest, no visible protective field. He looked like someone's tired neighbor who had wandered into the wrong wildlife documentary. I remember thinking Earth had misunderstood the assignment. We needed a predator specialist, not a man who smiled at nervous animals and carried a canvas bag full of treats, towels, and what he called backup snacks. Caleb entered the habitat slowly, just as instructed. Ruin watched from beneath a heat rock, shoulders low, tail stiff, little ears pinned back against his head. I saw the warning signs. So did every keeper in the room. Caleb saw them too, but instead of retreating, he turned his body slightly sideways, lowered his posture, and stopped looking directly into the cub's eyes. That was when one of the maintenance vents behind him hissed. A harmless pressure release. Routine. Normal. Ruin did not know that. The cub launched forward in a blur of fur and panic, clamped onto Caleb's padded sleeve, and every alarm in the observation room screamed at once. Someone shouted for a stun field. Someone else called the diplomatic office. My hand slammed down toward lockdown. Before I could activate it, Caleb raised his free hand, palm open, not toward Ruin, toward us. Stop, he said. Just one word. Not loud. Not angry. Stop. The room froze because the human did not sound injured or afraid. He sounded like a teacher interrupting a classroom before everyone made the problem worse. Ruin held on, trembling so hard his small shoulders shook. Caleb did not pull away. He did not scold. He did not glare. He slowly lowered himself onto one knee, letting the cub keep the sleeve, letting the panic burn through without feeding it. Hey, little guy, he murmured, voice low and warm enough that even the translators softened around it. What scared you? I stared through the glass, horrified. That was not protocol. That was not dominance. That was not even sensible. The cub had just triggered a sanctuary emergency, and the human was comforting it like the dangerous part was not the bite, but the fear behind it. Everyone feared Ruin because everyone understood what he would become. A Kravik cub was not dangerous the way a broken machine was dangerous, random and stupid and easy to blame. A Kravik cub was dangerous because every part of him was already practicing for adulthood. His paws were too large for his body because one day they would carry him through ironwood branches faster than most hover bikes could turn. His teeth were still small, but his jaw pressure had already cracked 3 approved feeding shells during enrichment training. His ears could track a keeper's heartbeat through a closed service door. His nose could separate fear, illness, food, metal, soap, and dishonesty in the same breath. And his voice, even at 4 months old, could make experienced staff step backward before their minds gave permission. We loved him, of course. That was the impossible part of sanctuary work. You could love a creature and still respect the fact that it was built by a world where hesitation became lunch. The Kravik home forests of Var were not gentle places. The trees grew black bark laced with iron. The storms turned the ground silver for days. Adult Kravik hunted in silence, defended family dens with terrifying focus, and bonded for life with those they trusted. That last detail was the one visitors always romanticized. Trust. They imagined trust meant soft eyes and cute pictures. They did not understand that for a predator species, trust was not friendliness. Trust was a survival contract. Break it once, and the animal remembered longer than most governments. Run had been brought to us after a transport accident separated him from his parents for 3 days. He had survived, which impressed the board. He had also arrived scared of vents, pressure hisses, reflective floors, sudden lights, tall strangers, and one specific brand of cleaning foam. That did not impress the board. It made them nervous. So we built procedures. Approach from the left. No direct eye contact longer than 2 seconds. No sudden vertical movement. No sharp tones. No exposed food scents. No unauthorized personnel. No entering alone. And absolutely, under no circumstances, allow a new handler to remain in contact after a defensive bite. Yet there Caleb Morgan was, kneeling in the habitat with Rune clamped onto his padded sleeve, calmly violating half our emergency manual by refusing to make the cub feel trapped. My assistant, Jor, whispered, "He is going to lose the hand." He was not. I could see that even through my panic. Rune had not repositioned. He had not pulled. His eyes were wide, unfocused, flicking between Caleb's face and the vent behind him. His tail was rigid, not lashing. His ears were flat, not forward. His body was saying fear so loudly that I was ashamed I had only heard danger. Caleb heard fear immediately. He kept his shoulders loose, lowered his gaze, and breathed slowly enough that the room microphones picked up the rhythm. In for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Out for 6. Rune's trembling did not stop, but it began to match him. That was when the observation room changed. We were still terrified, but now we were terrified in a more complicated way. The human had not overpowered the cub. He had not dominated him. He had not used a shield, a sedative, or a sonic command. He had done something our entire sanctuary system was too armored to attempt. He made himself predictable. Caleb's voice stayed low. "Yeah, that vent got you, huh? I hate weird noises too." The translator rendered the words plainly, but tone carried what language could not. No challenge. No punishment. No victory. Just presence. Rune's jaw loosened by the smallest amount. Every keeper in the room saw it. No one spoke. Caleb glanced toward the glass without moving his head. "Malira," he said, "I need the alarms off." I stared at him. The alarms are safety protocol. They are making him think the world is ending. He looked back at Rune. And right now, little guy already believes that. Caleb Morgan did not react correctly, which is another way of saying he reacted like a human. Our emergency manual had 14 approved responses for a Kravik defensive bite, and every one of them involved distance, barriers, controlled noise, or authorized restraint systems. Caleb used none of them. He did not yank his sleeve free. He did not raise his voice. He did not stare Rune down or try to prove he was dominant, which was good, because proving dominance to a frightened predator cub is how idiots become case studies. Instead, he made himself smaller. Slowly, carefully, he shifted from one knee to both knees, turning his body at an angle so Rune did not have to face him head-on. The movement was so gradual that even the motion sensors hesitated before marking it as posture change. Rune's eyes flicked to Caleb's shoulder, then to the vent, then back to the sleeve in his mouth. His breathing stayed fast, but the rhythm had stopped climbing. That mattered. Panic is a staircase. Caleb had found the step where it paused. "Malira," he said again, soft but clear, "alarms off." My hand hovered over the control. Every protocol in my training screamed no. The alarms told staff to stay back. The alarms warned nearby habitats to seal. The alarms made the sanctuary feel official, controlled, safe. But through the glass, Rune flinched every time the pulse tone repeated. Each warning flash reflected in his amber eyes like lightning. We had built a system to protect everyone from the cub, and the system was terrifying the cub. I muted the alarms. The room fell into a silence so sudden that several keepers looked more frightened, not less. Rune noticed immediately. His ears moved one fraction away from his skull. Caleb nodded once, not to us, to him. "Better, right?" he murmured. Weird screaming ceiling was not helping. Jor whispered behind me. "Is he making jokes at the animal?" "No," I said, though I was not sure. "He is making the room less sharp." Caleb slowly opened his free hand and placed it palm down on the floor, fingers relaxed. Not reaching, not offering, just there. Then he looked away from Rune completely, and studied a harmless spot on the habitat wall. That was the part that confused half my staff. To most civilized species, looking away from danger is foolish. To a cornered predator, it can be mercy. Direct focus is pressure. Pressure becomes challenge. Challenge becomes escalation. Caleb seemed to know this in his bones. Run's jaw loosened another tiny amount. The padded sleeve shifted but did not tear. Caleb breathed in for 4, out for 6, patient as gravity. No one in the observation room moved. The cub gave a small, broken sound, not a growl, not a warning, something younger and sadder. Caleb's face changed then, just slightly. The calm remained, but the softness underneath became visible. "There you are," he whispered. That was when I realized Caleb had never been waiting for the bite to stop. He had been waiting for the fear to surface. Slowly, Run released the sleeve. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, uncertain what came next. Every keeper expected Caleb to retreat. That would have been logical. That would have been safe. That would have been protocol. Caleb did the opposite. He stayed exactly where he was, letting the cub discover that letting go did not make the human vanish, punish, or lunge. Rune backed up 6 inches, then stopped. Caleb did not follow. "Good choice, buddy," he said. Then, without looking at me, he added, "Nobody opens the door yet. He needs to learn this does not end with a crowd rushing him." I swallowed. The human had been bitten, ignored our manual, corrected our environment, and was now teaching the sanctuary how not to scare its own patient. And the most humiliating part was that the cub was listening. Malira expected panic because panic was the honest reaction. That is what I told myself later. Any reasonable being in Caleb Morgan's position would have backed away, requested medical assessment, and allowed trained sanctuary staff to re-establish control with barriers and remote systems. Any reasonable staff member would have activated containment, logged the bite as a high-risk response event, and moved the cub into calming isolation for evaluation. Reasonable would have made everyone feel better. Reasonable would also have taught Ruin that releasing the human made the world rush at him again. Caleb seemed to understand that before the rest of us even knew what lesson was being taught. He stayed on both knees, angled sideways, one hand resting on the habitat floor, the damaged sleeve held close but not hidden. He did not inspect it dramatically. He did not make the cub watch his own mistake. Ruin crouched 6 inches away, breathing in quick little bursts, eyes still wide, tail still stiff, but no longer locked onto Caleb like a target. The vent behind them clicked softly as the pressure system reset. Every keeper in the observation room tensed. Run flinched. Caleb did not. He only said, "Yeah, I heard it too. Annoying, right?" The cub's ears twitched. That tiny movement hit me harder than the alarms had. I had spent months classifying Rune by risk level, diet plan, growth stage, habitat tolerance, scent response, and socialization index. Caleb was reading him as a scared child with too many instincts and not enough answers. My professional pride did not appreciate this. My conscience appreciated it less, because it knew he was right. Jor whispered, "Should we deploy the calming mist?" "No," I said, surprising myself. "Why not?" "Because he is not escalating." That was the first time I said it out loud. Run was not escalating. He had bitten, released, retreated, and remained. In Kravik behavior, that sequence mattered. A truly aggressive cub would push forward, claim space, test reaction, make the human smaller. Run was doing the opposite. He was holding his ground only because he did not trust the room to stay quiet. Caleb saw every detail. The ears not forward, the tail not sweeping, the weight tucked backward, the pupils wide, the breath too fast. He was not looking at a predator preparing to attack. He was looking at a frightened animal who had used the only tool fear gave him. Caleb slowly shifted his free hand toward the canvas bag at his side, then stopped before touching it. Run's body tightened. Caleb froze with him. "Good catch," he murmured. "Too fast." My throat went dry. He had corrected himself because the cub reacted, not because a manual told him to. Then he moved slower, 1 inch at a time, until he reached the bag and pulled out a folded blue towel. Not a treat, not a lure, a towel. He placed it on the floor between them and slid it forward only a few inches. Rune stared at it, as though it might be alive. Caleb looked away again. "No pressure," he said. "It is just softer than the floor." Something in the observation room changed then. We had been waiting for Caleb to regain control. He was not trying to control anything. He was giving Rune choices small enough to survive. The cub leaned forward, stopped, sniffed, retreated. Caleb did not react. Rune tried again, touched the towel with one paw, then pulled it closer with the cautious dignity of a creature pretending the idea had been his all along. Caleb smiled, barely. There you go. I expected relief to flood the room. Instead, I felt shame. Not because our protocols were cruel. They were not. They had saved lives, prevented chaos, and kept dangerous animals from being misunderstood by frightened visitors. But we had built them around what Kravik could do, not always around what they felt. Caleb had seen both. He glanced toward the glass at last, and even through the barrier, I felt the weight of his calm. Malira, he said, can you lower the habitat lights by 20%? He is still waiting for the next bad thing. I lowered them. Rune exhaled, a shaky little sound that made every keeper in the room go still. The human had not ended the emergency by winning. He had ended it by convincing a predator cub that the emergency was allowed to be over. Earth had raised worse, Caleb said later, though he said it with such tired affection that it took me a moment to realize he was not insulting either planet. Rune had pulled the blue towel against his chest and settled low on the habitat floor, still wary, still trembling in little fading waves, but no longer trapped inside the first instant of fear. Caleb remained where he was, close enough to be present, far enough to be polite. The observation room stayed silent because no one wanted to be the fool who ruined a miracle by clearing their throat. Finally, Professor Haven from Xenobehavior opened a soft channel into the habitat. Instructor Morgan, how did you identify a fear response so quickly? Caleb glanced toward the speaker, then back toward the cub without turning his head too fast. Because he looked scared, he said. Haven blinked through the glass. Yes, but which diagnostic category indicated that? Caleb rubbed his undamaged hand across his knee. Ears pinned, tail locked, weight back, eyes too wide, breathing too high, bite stayed on the sleeve instead of moving. No forward pressure after contact. He was not trying to win. He was trying to make the scary thing stop moving. The scary thing, in this case, had been the human. That realization sat very heavily in my chest. We had all seen the same body language. Caleb had simply believed it before fear edited the evidence. Jor whispered, humans have predators on Earth, yes? Caleb heard him through the open channel and gave a small laugh. We have predators, prey animals, pets, working animals, toddlers, teenagers, and house cats. The translator handled most of that poorly, especially house cats, which it rendered as domestic ambush companion. Several keepers looked disturbed. Caleb continued, a lot of Earth life comes with teeth, claws, hooves, horns, panic, bad moods, or all of the above. You learn early that scared does not always look gentle. Sometimes scared looks loud. Sometimes it looks angry. Sometimes it grabs the nearest thing and hangs on, because letting go feels worse. Rune's ears twitched at Caleb's voice. The cub was listening again, not to the meaning, but to the steady rhythm underneath it. Caleb lowered his volume another step. Back home, if a dog snaps because someone scared it, you do not fix that by becoming scarier. You make space. You lower the pressure. You figure out what happened. If a horse spooks, you do not win an argument with 1,300 pounds of panic. You calm your own body first. If a kid melts down, shouting over them usually just teaches them the world is louder than they can handle. Haven made a note with visible urgency. Are these all predator species? Caleb paused. The kid? Usually not. A tiny sound moved through the observation room. Almost laughter, quickly swallowed. It felt good and wrong at the same time. Caleb looked down at Rune, whose front paws now rested fully on the towel. Humans are not special because we are the strongest thing on Earth, he said. We are not. We are special because we had to learn the difference between danger and distress, and we had to learn it while living beside both. I stared at him through the glass. That was not the human power we had expected. The council briefings called humans deathworlders with high endurance, pain tolerance, pack bonding, tool use, and aggression potential under threat. Useful categories. Frightening categories. Incomplete categories. None of them explained this. A man kneeling quietly beside a predator cub who had frightened an entire sanctuary, treating fear like something that deserved translation before judgment. Rune shifted forward 1 inch. Then another. Caleb did not reach for him. The cub sniffed the padded sleeve again, the place where his panic had landed, and gave a small, unhappy chirr. Caleb's face softened. Yeah, he murmured. Big feelings. Bad choice. Happens to everybody. Ruin leaned closer, not trusting us, not trusting the room, but trusting the one creature that had not turned fear into punishment. That was when I understood the death world lesson differently. Earth had not only raised creatures that survived danger. It had raised creatures that could stay calm enough to comfort danger when danger was scared. The cub chose him slowly, which made it mean more. Trust that arrives all at once is usually hunger, exhaustion, or bad judgment. Trust that crawls forward 1 inch at a time has made decisions. Rune shifted closer to Caleb Morgan with the blue towel gathered under his paws. Nose working, ears no longer pinned flat, but still low enough to tell every keeper in the observation room not to celebrate too soon. Caleb did not move toward him. That mattered. The human let the cub spend his own courage. 1 inch. Pause. Sniff. Another inch. Pause. Caleb kept his breathing steady and his shoulders loose. Eyes turned slightly away, so Ruin did not feel trapped beneath attention. I had seen advanced calming fields fail to create that much space inside a frightened animal. Caleb made it with posture. Ruin reached the edge of Caleb's knee and stopped. His nose touched the damaged sleeve. He gave that small, unhappy chirr again. The sound young Kravik make when instinct and regret have run into each other and neither knows where to stand. Caleb looked down only with his eyes. Hey, he murmured. You are okay. I am okay. Bad minute, not a bad life. The translator gave us the words, but the cub only cared about the tone. Low, warm, predictable. Caleb slowly picked up the towel by one corner, moving so carefully that the motion looked almost boring. Ruin watched the towel instead of the hand. Good, Caleb whispered. Watch the thing, not the worry. He lifted it just enough to drape part of it over the cub's shoulders. Ruin stiffened. Every keeper stiffened with him. Caleb stopped immediately. No pressure. Your choice. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then Ruin pushed his head farther under the towel himself, tucking against Caleb's knee with the sudden awkwardness of a creature who had decided comfort was acceptable but still wanted to pretend it had not been suggested by someone else. The observation room forgot how to breathe. Jor whispered, he is leaning on him. No one answered. We could see that. We could see the impossible thing happening in front of us. A Kravik cub, still scared, still powerful, still capable of turning a room into paperwork and apologies, had chosen the soft, unarmored Earthborn over the sanctuary that had raised him behind shields. Caleb rested one hand on the floor beside the cub, not touching yet. Ruin looked at the hand, sniffed it. Caleb waited. Then the cub pressed the side of his head against Caleb's sleeve, exactly where he had bitten moments earlier. It was not submission. Kravik do not submit the way herd species do. It was contact. Apology, maybe. Request, certainly. Caleb's face changed in a way I still remember. Not triumph. Not pride. Relief. He used 2 fingers to rub gently behind Ruin's ear, so light that the fur barely moved. The cub exhaled and sank lower, the towel sliding over his back like a small blanket. Someone in the back of the observation room made a sound that might have been a sob, though official sanctuary records later called it an equipment squeak for professional reasons. Caleb looked toward the glass at last. Kill the vent cycle in this room for 10 minutes, please. I found my voice. It regulates humidity. He is more worried about the hiss than the humidity. I turned it off. Run's body loosened another fraction. Caleb nodded. Thank you. Then he said the sentence that rewrote our training manual before anyone had opened a document. He does not need control right now. He needs the room to stop proving him right. I looked at the cub wrapped against him, then at the shields, the alarms, the dampeners, the protocols, the 12 signatures we required to enter a nursery habitat. We had built a fortress around fear and called it safety. The human had built one quiet moment and called it enough. Run's eyes began to close. Not fully. Predators do not surrender awareness easily. But the lids softened, his breathing dropped into Caleb's rhythm. And for the first time since the transport accident that brought him to us, the most feared cub in nursery habitat 3 rested against a living being without waiting for betrayal. That was when I stopped thinking of Caleb Morgan as fragile. Fragile creatures do not make predators feel safe. The parents arrived at the worst possible moment because the universe enjoys testing good ideas before anyone has finished believing in them. Ruin had nearly settled against Caleb Morgan's knee, wrapped in the blue towel, breathing in slow, uneven waves that followed the human's rhythm. The observation room had begun to relax by fractions, the way frightened people relax when they are afraid to admit they are relaxing. Then the outer habitat sensors flashed gold. Adult Kravik returning from enrichment range. 2 signatures. Full size. Fast approach. Every keeper in the room went cold. Ruin's parents had been in the Western exercise enclosure when the incident began, separated by 3 shield doors and a habitat corridor. Under normal conditions, that was enough. Under normal conditions, their cub did not carry alarm scent, human scent, stress scent, and a fear spike all tangled together like a warning flag. The first adult appeared beyond the far glass a moment later. Sarah, the mother, moved like a storm, deciding to be quiet. 6 feet at the shoulder, black gold fur rippling over muscle, amber eyes fixed on the nursery door. Behind her came Vor, heavier, scarred across one brow from old forest territorial displays. Head low, ears forward, every line of his body asking the same question in a language older than speech. "Where's my cub?" Jor made a sound beside me. "We need full separation." I reached for the parent gate lock, but Caleb's voice came through the habitat channel before my hand landed. "Do not slam any barriers." My heart nearly stopped from the absurdity of that request. "Instructor Morgan, 2 adult Kravik are at the nursery access." I know. He did not look away from Ruin. That is why I said do not slam anything. Ruin had lifted his head under the towel. His breathing changed again, not panic this time, but recognition mixed with uncertainty. He smelled them. They smelled him. And they smelled Caleb. A human. Inside their cub space. Wearing stress on one sleeve. Every protocol demanded layered shields, scent blocks, and remote calming tones. Caleb demanded quiet. He shifted only enough to place the towel loosely around Ruin without trapping him. Then he lowered his hand back to the floor, palm open, empty. "Visible. Malira," he said, "I need the parent door open to the inner threshold, not the full habitat." "Let them see him." "Absolutely not. Haven't snapped from behind me." Caleb's answer stayed mild. "Then they will imagine worse." That sentence did what fear could not. It made sense. I opened the first threshold. The heavy door rose 6 inches, then 12, then enough for scent and sight to cross, but not enough for entry. Sarah's head lowered instantly. Her nostrils flared. Vor pressed close beside her, silent as gravity. Ruin gave a tiny chirr and pushed forward, but Caleb did not grab him. He did not hold the cub back. He only shifted his knee aside, so Ruin had a clear line toward his parents. "See," Caleb whispered. "They came. You are not alone." Sarah's gaze moved from Ruin to Caleb. The observation room stopped breathing for the second time that day. There are moments when a predator looks at you and you understand that civilization is mostly lighting and paperwork. Caleb did not stare back. He turned his face slightly away, shoulders loose, body low, no challenge in the shape of him. He kept one hand visible and one hand resting beside the cub, not on him. Vor rumbled, so deep the glass vibrated softly. Ruin answered with a small shaky sound. Caleb nodded like he had been included in a family conversation. "Yeah, I would be worried too," he murmured. "He is okay. Scared, but okay." Sarah pressed her nose through the narrow opening as far as the threshold allowed. Ruin stepped toward her, then paused and looked back at Caleb. That look broke something in my understanding. The cub did not look back in fear. He looked back to make sure the calm thing was still there. Caleb smiled faintly. "Go on, buddy. Your mom is right there." Ruin moved to the threshold and touched noses with Sarah. Her eyes closed for half a breath. Vor's rumble softened. Then both adults looked at Caleb again. Not as prey, not as enemy, not even as intruder. As the creature who had stayed calm beside their frightened cub when everyone else had been ready to turn the room into alarms and force fields. Caleb bowed his head, just a little. Not submission. Respect. The 2 adult Kravik held his scent in. Silence, and none of us dared move. The apex predators understood first, which was humiliating for every educated being behind the glass. We had degrees, protocols, restraint systems, scent models, and a sanctuary manual heavy enough to qualify as exercise equipment. Sarah and Vor had noses, eyes, instincts, and one frightened cub pressed against the threshold with a blue towel slipping off his shoulders. They understood faster than we did. Sarah lowered her massive head to Ruin and breathed him in slowly, reading the story written in scent. Fear, alarm, human fabric. No pursuit, no challenge, no punishment. The sequence mattered. Vor's gaze stayed on Caleb Morgan, but his posture changed by a fraction that only a Kravik keeper would notice. His ears eased sideways, his shoulders lowered. The rumble in his chest softened from warning to assessment. Caleb remained still on both knees, head slightly bowed, hands open, making no claim over the cub and no claim against the parents. That restraint said more than any translator could. Ruin turned and padded back toward Caleb. Not all the way, just 2 uncertain steps. Sarah watched him choose. Vor watched Caleb allow the choice. Then Sarah did something no adult Kravik had ever done with a visiting specialist in my career. She pushed her nose farther through the threshold and touched the torn padded sleeve. Not Caleb's skin, the sleeve, the place where panic had happened. Caleb did not move until her nose withdrew. Then he said softly, he did not mean it. The sentence was for us, not for her, but I swear Sarah understood the shape of it. Her eyes shifted from the sleeve to Caleb's face, and for one strange moment the habitat felt less like a containment space and more like a family meeting where the rest of us had arrived overdressed and underqualified. Malira, Caleb said without looking away from the parents, can you widen the threshold another foot? Professor Haven made a strangled noise. Absolutely not. Caleb waited. He did not argue. Ruin leaned against Sarah's muzzle, then looked back at him again. That look decided me. I widened the threshold. 1 foot. Not enough for the adults to enter fully, but enough for Sarah to extend 1 forepaw onto the inner floor. The glass room went rigid. Sarah placed the paw down gently, claws retracted, weight controlled. Vor remained behind her, guarding without crowding. Caleb shifted back 6 inches to give space before anyone could tell him to. Sarah noticed. Of course she noticed. Predators notice pressure. More importantly, they notice when pressure is removed. She stepped closer, lowered her head over Ruin, and breathed once across Caleb's shoulder. His hair moved from the force of it. He closed his eyes briefly, not in fear, but to avoid the challenge of a direct stare. Good mom, he murmured. The translator rendered it as competent mother, which was accurate and somehow not enough. Sarah's forehead touched his shoulder. Lightly, deliberately. The observation room made no sound at all. Adult Kravik do not waste contact. They do not perform affection for witnesses. A forehead touch is acknowledgement, scent marking, and conditional trust braided together. It did not mean Caleb was safe forever. Nothing with Kravik means forever except memory. But it meant that in this moment, with her cub calm and the room quiet, Sarah had placed Caleb in the category of protector, not threat. Vor rumbled once, deep and low, then lowered his own head. Caleb opened his eyes and gave the smallest nod. Respect returned. Not dominance. Not submission. Recognition. That was the overkill twist none of our fear had prepared us for. The human had not conquered the cub. He had not subdued the parents. He had done something far more difficult in a room full of creatures trained to escalate. He had stayed calm until the predators had enough evidence to choose peace. Ruin, apparently satisfied that everyone important had finally behaved properly, crawled back under the blue towel and pressed himself against Caleb's knee and Sarah's paw at the same time. The sight broke the last piece of my old certainty. Humans were not gentle because they lacked danger. They were gentle because they could hold danger in one hand and still offer comfort with the other. They stopped calling humans fragile after the sanctuary reviewed the footage. Not immediately, of course. Institutions never learn immediately. First there were reports, interviews, medical scans, behavior notes, diplomatic summaries, and one very long meeting where 12 experts tried to explain why the human had ignored half our emergency procedures and somehow produced the safest outcome anyone had recorded with a Kravik cub in distress. Caleb Morgan sat through that meeting with his damaged sleeve folded on the table in front of him, white skin still marked with faint pressure bruising beneath the medical gel, expression calm, patient, and increasingly confused by how complicated we were making kindness sound. Ruin slept through most of it in the recovery habitat, curled between Sarah's foreleg and the same blue towel, while Vor guarded the door with the deep satisfaction of a father who believed everyone else had finally become sensible. I asked Caleb the question near the end, after the behavior analyst had finished turning his breathing pattern into a chart. Why did you not react with fear? He looked at me for a moment, then gave a small, tired smile. I did, he said. I was scared. The room went quiet. That answer did not fit the story we had already started telling ourselves. We wanted the human to be fearless because fearless is easy to categorize. Fearless is a trait. Fearless goes in a file. Caleb shook his head slightly. Being scared is not the problem. Letting your fear make the room worse is the problem. I looked through the glass at Rune, at the cub who had turned a diplomatic emergency into a nap because one human had refused to escalate. Caleb followed my gaze. Scared things do not need punishment, he said. They need someone calm. That sentence became the first line of our new emergency protocol. Not officially at first. Officially, the document was titled Kravik Juvenile Fear Response Revision, which sounded like a committee had tried to domesticate a revelation. But every keeper knew the real name. Someone calm. We changed the alarm tones. We lowered the lights in Nursery Habitat 3. We rewrote bite response procedure to separate defensive contact from aggressive pursuit. We trained staff to look for fear before force, to reduce pressure before adding barriers, and to stop treating every predator reaction as a challenge to authority. The results were immediate enough to make us uncomfortable. Rune improved within days. He stopped hiding under the heat rock after vent cycles. He began approaching enrichment objects before they were placed and not after everyone left. He still distrusted reflective floors, which, honestly, showed excellent judgment. But when frightened, he no longer expected the world to become louder. That was Caleb's gift to him. Not control, expectation. The belief that fear might be met with steadiness. The story spread, because sanctuary stories always do, especially when they embarrass professional certainty. At first, other facilities mocked us gently. Then their own difficult predator juveniles improved under the revised protocol. Then military beast handlers requested the training. Then diplomatic schools asked for the footage, because apparently a human kneeling beside a frightened apex cub explained crisis management better than 6 semesters of negotiation theory. Caleb hated that part. He said Rune deserved privacy. Rune, being Kravik, expressed no opinion on public education, but did chew the corner of a training tablet when shown his own recording. Years later, when new staff arrive at the sanctuary, I take them first to Nursery Habitat 3. I show them the reinforced glass, the manual controls, the softened alarm lights, and the blue towel preserved in a display case beside the revised protocol. Then I tell them about the day we expected war because a predator cub bit a human, and the human asked what scared him. I tell them how the cub chose him, how the parents understood him, and how the rest of us finally caught up to the animals. And when someone inevitably says humans are gentle for a death world species, I correct them. Humans are not gentle because they are harmless. They are gentle because their world taught them how dangerous fear can become when nobody stays calm. That is why the Kravik remember Caleb Morgan. Not as prey, not as handler, not even as a visitor. As the quiet creature who proved strength does not always arrive with raised voices and locked shields. Sometimes strength kneels, lowers its eyes, softens the room, and waits until fear is brave enough to let go.